We've been doing a series on the Ten Commandments, partly because they're in the news today, and as we believe in this community, it is not right, and in our country actually not legal, to force our religious opinions on anyone else. And yet, it's too easy sometimes to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so we're taking a new look, a metaphysical look at the Ten Commandments and looking at them as challenges for how to live our lives more skillfully today. And this is the hardest one. Thou shalt honor thy father and mother. Thou shalt honor thy father and mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord hath given thee. Okay, raise your hand if there was no dysfunction in your family. Oh, awesome. Raise your hand if when you hear honor thy father and mother, you get a little sore tummy. Yeah. So we're going to talk about what that means. What does that mean? So to honor something is to give weight to it. Can you give weight to your mother and father? Were they important? Were they extremely important in your development? Another definition of the word honor is to regard or treat with admiration or respect. Well, we don't always admiration or respect. We may not find that there's much to admire, and yet we can find that there is something to respect. Admire when warranted, and give credit where credit is due, because that is difficult for us. We get, as Pema Chodron so beautifully, this Buddhist teacher so beautifully described, our emotions get locked in, and we get angry, or we get hurt, or we feel betrayed, or we feel whatever it is we feel, and that colors the whole thing. Even those of us who had the most difficult childhoods, I would imagine there was something admirable. So give that where it's due, but more, give respect to the role. There may not be another person in your life that is as important to who you are as the people who gave birth to you and or reared you. They help shape us. But just as Pema Chodron said, they shape us in the ways we can be shaped in a way that we're awake, that we're alive, that we're paying attention, that we're using whatever happened and whatever is still with us to wake up, to learn, to grow, to evolve. Or we can use our parents to be miserable. We can use the way we were raised to justify being bitter. We can use the way we were raised to continue to hurt ourselves, because guess what? I'm guessing most of you, your parents don't live in your house anymore. So who's hurting you now? Yeah. We repeat those stories. The stories happened. They may have hurt a lot. And yet, who's telling the story now? I'm telling the story to myself over and over and over again. What happened to me? What was done to me? And what if I can honor my mother and father by telling myself a different story? Not to absolve them or condone behavior that wasn't good or right or kind, that was perhaps abusive. We're not talking about condoning abuse. We're not talking about saying, well, that was okay. We're talking about saying, that's what was, and here's what I am going to do about it, because I am in charge of my life, and no one's going to wake me up, only I get to choose to wake up. So, to give serious consideration to, honor and respect. Respect means to give serious consideration to. Can you give serious consideration to your mother and father, to the way you were raised, to your parents? Also, to respect something means to fulfill the terms, to live up to or fulfill the terms, let's say, of a contract. fulfill the terms of the roles that we play. Guess what? You get to choose your role. I don't know if you chose it before you were born, but here you are now, you know? Another definition of respect, I go down word holes, is to accept as your payment or due. Your karma, your choice. There are many who believe, I'm not going to weigh in on this because I don't know, I can't remember before I was born. But there are many who believe that we made a contract before we were born, that we actually talked with other souls and said, here's what I need to learn in this life. I need to learn how to love myself even if I never got love from anyone else. So would you come and play the very, very painful role of not loving me well while I'm young and vulnerable, so that I can be faced with that and finally learn to love myself without leaning on anyone else's love? It's possible. It could happen. Maybe it did happen. Maybe it didn't happen. I don't know. But if that's what was true for you, you have the choice to make that the truth now. Maybe you weren't loved in the way you needed to be loved. Maybe you were hurt when you were at your most vulnerable. What are you going to do with that now? Are you going to go, well, that's the way it was, so I'm just going to be an unlovable, miserable person looking for love in all the wrong places for the rest of my life because I was used to looking for love from people who weren't going to give it to me, so I'm going to keep on going to people who cannot give it to me so that I can prove to myself over and over and over again, see, not lovable, that's what it is. Or am I going to say, no, I am 100% lovable as a child of God. That's who I am. My parent is somebody who played a role on this human plane in this lifetime. But my parent is spirit. My actual father is God. My actual mother is divine, is the divine. So, karma. This is a very, very difficult concept. I was asked about this last week. It's not about tit for tat. It's not about, I did this in a former life, that's why I have to do this now. Or I did this yesterday, and this is why this is happening to me today. We certainly have consequences that happen in our lives. But karma yoga is about taking what you've been given, whatever it is, and using it to wake up. So how do you do that? Well, one way to honor, I have found, I did not have an easy childhood. I had parents who I do believe loved me, and they loved me imperfectly, as I imagine most of your parents loved you imperfectly. There was alcoholism in my household. There was abuse in my household. There was physical and sexual and verbal and mental and emotional abuse in my household. And that's the thing. And I don't choose to gloss over that. I don't choose to say, oh, it didn't matter, it didn't happen, it wasn't a big deal. Is my microphone going in and out? Let's take this off. There we go. Turn me on, Perry. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know if the battery's going out or what, but I choose to tell the truth as I see it, but then to take the blame out of it. Can you do that? Because otherwise you're sitting on the edge of the Grand Canyon with a black bag over your head. This world is beautiful. This world is amazing. The love that is available for you is unlimited. Unless you put the bag over your head and don't accept it. So, I say the first thing is I do not keep the secrets of my family. I honor my father and mother by not keeping the secrets that kept them sick. Amen. I honor my father and mother by telling the truth and then by breaking the chain. I don't have to keep doing what was done. I get to do it differently. And guess what? Whatever they did to you, chances are is what was done to them, which was what was done to them, which was what was done to them for generations and generations and generations. So I would say to repeat the patterns of our parents is not to honor our father and mother, but to break the chain is to honor our father and mother. Hurt people hurt people. Beautiful quote. I remind myself of this all the time. When I'm watching the news, I say to myself, hurt people hurt people. That's what happens. This is a quote by Rabbi Yehuda Berg. That's how pain patterns get passed on generation after generation after generation. Break that chain today. Meet anger with sympathy, contempt with compassion, cruelty with kindness. Greet grimaces with smiles. Forgive and forget about finding fault. Whose fault it is. That is so important to us, isn't it? We want to know who to blame. Why? That doesn't fix it. Forget about finding fault. He says, love is the weapon of the future. Arm yourself. Arm yourself with love. So we tell the truth, we start to see clearly, and then we start to grow up and not get lost in the value judgments. My parents were who they were. They're no longer with me. My parents were who they were. There were beautiful things about them. There were really hurtful things that they did. They were who they were, and I get to choose who I am. So we honor. I would suggest to you that you can honor your parents completely and fully by becoming functional, skilled, and loving as an adult, not by emulating that which was given to you. If something was given to you that's worth emulation, that's worth admiration, that's worth keeping and passing on to the next generation, and I don't care if you have kids or not, that's not what the next generation is about. The next generation is about everyone you come into contact with. That's the next generation that you're passing on. So if there's something admirable, something that is worthy of emulation, then yeah, emulate it. But if not, find what is worthy and do that instead. Can you think of a greater honor to give your parents? Pay attention. Because everybody, and this is true of me, it's true of you, it was definitely true of your parents, even though I never met them. We can all be either a good example or a dire warning. Right? There are things that I do that I don't even question that I do because I haven't looked at it yet. There are things I'm sure because she tells me, there are things I'm sure I passed on to my daughter that she's like, I noticed this about you. It's like, thank you for pointing that out. She says the reason that she stopped believing in Santa Claus so early is because of my tendency to want credit for everything. So when Santa would give her a really good gift, I would say something like, I told him that's what you wanted. And she's like, Santa sounds an awful lot like Mommy. Yes, hoist by my own petard. Everything can be helpful if we make it so. Everything can be useful if we make it so. And please do not undervalue humor. Man, there are some things that when they happened, they seemed not funny at all. But can you find some humor in them now? Can you see the ridiculousness of the situation now that you're no longer the victim of the situation? Can you see the ridiculousness of it and go, whew, man, weren't we caught in a whirlwind and none of us knew it? Thank you, God, that I get to know it today, that I get to see it clearly. One of the things we can do to honor our parents is to understand that we are not them and to appropriately separate from them. If your parents are still alive, I'm encouraging you to use appropriate boundaries with them. It doesn't mean you have to do everything that they want you to do at all. The biggest thing that I did while my parents were alive to heal my relationship with them is to get really clear on what my boundaries were. Now, boundaries are never something that you tell another person they can or cannot do. I never said, Daddy, you can't speak to me that way. Because obviously he could. He did, right? My boundary was, Daddy, if you begin to speak to me that way, I will not stand here anymore. I will leave. I will leave the room, and if you follow me to the next room, I will leave the house. And I could do that with kindness. I didn't have to do that in a way that caused him to be defensive. Because believe me, for years and years and years before I did that, I said, you can't talk to me that way. Don't you see what you're doing to me? Don't you see how it hurts? I didn't hold back, y'all. Imagine that. You're killing our family. Can't you see what you're doing? Can't you see what your drinking is doing? Can't you see what this attitude was doing? Can't you hear the words that you're saying and how horrible they are? Oh, yeah, I lectured him. This as a teenager, much less as an adult. And all that did was make him angrier and angrier and make me more and more the victim because I stood there. If you're not present, you don't get beat. And my brother and sisters would say, why do you sit with him? We get out of the house. And I was like, because I'm going to convince him. I'm a preacher from way back. Gonna convince him. But one day, I got healthy enough to go, you know what? I get to love my dad. I don't have to love everything he does. I don't have to love his attitudes. I don't have to love the way when he feels the tiniest bit threatened, he goes on the attack. I get to love him. And I get to, when the attack happens, get out of the way. Stop showing up for it. And literally, when I learned to do this with love, things changed so quickly, I can't even tell you how quickly they changed. Daddy, I'm not going to talk to you about that. We're never going to agree on it. I'm not going to talk to you about it. I walk in the kitchen with my mother. Daddy follows me into the kitchen because he has a point to make, right? Because he's not going to let it go. Of course he's not going to let it go. So I say, well, I think it's time for me to go home. Love you. Bye. I didn't have to yell at anybody. I didn't have to be mean to anybody. I got to respect myself. And how much more could I honor my parents than by growing up as a person who has respect for herself? Yeah. Honor your parents by respecting yourself enough to know what you will accept and what you won't accept, and then to cheerfully, lovingly, kindly stick around for what's acceptable, and cheerfully, lovingly, kindly get the heck out of here for what is not acceptable. And that's just not with your parents, that's with everybody in your life. You don't ever have to stand still. You did when you were a child. Yeah, I'm not blaming you. When you're little, you had no choice. Now you have choice. You get to leave the room. You get to leave the house. You get to leave the country. You get to not answer the phone. During the last several years of my mother's life, when the phone would ring, and sometimes it did 30 times a day, I would look, and it would be her, and here's the habit that I developed. I would put the phone over my heart and say, okay, God, do I have the strength to handle this right now? And if the answer was no, I let it go to voicemail. And often the answer was yes, because, see, I checked in with God, and now I have the power of God moving through me, and it's not just little tiny Melinda that's reacting. I get to say, hello, how are you? And here's another thing. Who are your parents anyway? Are they your DNA? I was not reared by the people who contributed ovum and sperm to me. I was given up for adoption at a very young age. My biological father never knew he had a child, and my biological mother gave me up when I was 6 days old. And I was raised by another couple who are definitely my parents. You know, maybe I have 4 parents, I don't know. But the ones who had influence on me were the ones that I was raised by. But also, this is a way to honor your parents. The parenting that you didn't get from them, you get to find a way to get it. There are other people in your life who are willing to fill the gaps. There definitely were other people all along. Did you notice them? Did you take advantage of what they had to give you? Did you have a teacher who was able to say attaboy when your dad couldn't say attaboy? Did you have a neighbor who gave you a sandwich when you were hungry? Did you have an aunt? Did you have a grandmother or a grandfather who was able to fill in the gaps? My husband, who's one of the most loving people I've ever known, never heard the words "I love you" in his family at all. And somehow, as a very little boy, he decided he was going to say it anyway, even though no one ever said it back. And he grew into an adult who continued to say "I love you" until he surrounded himself by the people who were able to say it back to him and mean it. There's some strength right there. You don't have to wait for someone else's love. You get to give and then receive. Give and then receive. If you want love, give love. Period. So who are our parents? Our DNA, the people who cared for us, all elders? Yeah. We're the next generation of all elders. They all parented us in some way. All our ancestors, as the Sioux grandmothers say, all of my relations, because guess what? We are one. We are one. Your parents are my parents. Your parents who took physical birth in this human life were playing a different role, perhaps, than my parents were playing for me. But I would posit to you that your parents played the perfect role for you to become who you want to become. And you get to decide who it is you want to become. So another big question that I get asked, and it's a hard question. What do we owe our parents? If you were abused by your parents, do you owe it to give up your life to take care of them at the end of their life? I would say, and this is just my personal opinion, nope. You don't owe anything. You don't owe anything. There are natural consequences to our behaviors on this earth. People who behave in certain ways will experience the consequences of their behavior. But perhaps, so I would never fault you for saying, no, I don't have it in me, I can't do it. But perhaps there's an even bigger question, which is beyond what they deserve, but which is, who do I deserve to be? What kind of human do I want to be in this world? How do I want to stand up? How do I want to show up? How do I want to love? With boundaries. Don't love anybody without boundaries, y'all. Except maybe yourself. Who do you want to be? Because by becoming who you truly want to be, who you truly are in truth, you are love incarnate on planet Earth. You are a direct descendant of Almighty God. Right? You are the living spirit in form. What if you honor your parents by doing everything you can to act like it? We are the living spirit in form. Thank you. So we're going to take that idea into a short meditation. I invite you to just breathe. Breathe. breathe from as deep in your belly as you can reach. What helps me is to imagine that I'm actually drawing breath up through the earth, through the soles of my feet, filling my lungs from the bottom up. That kind of breathing relaxes something in us. So I invite you to just continue breathing from as deep in your belly as you can. And when you think of the word mother or father or parent, if there's tightening in your body, I invite you to breathe that deep belly breath through wherever feels tight. I invite you to know that love shows up in many forms. I invite you to know that love is not what is given to you, but what you make of what is given to you. Maybe you were given love, and you make that love who you are. It already is in truth. You might as well face it. And what if love was withheld? Then I invite you to experience that as a void, as a vacuum that is creating a space for love to rush in and to allow that love to rush into that empty space. Breathe it in from all around you, from underneath you, from above you, and to know that it's always been within you. You were actually never without love. It was always there. Breathe in that love now. Allow the thought, everything that has ever happened in my life up until now was designed for my awakening. Was designed to help me know love in this incarnation at this moment. There is nothing that cannot be used for that purpose. So in this moment, I invite you to make a choice. I will use what happens to show up as love for myself and for the world. I will use what has happened, regardless of how I reacted to it at the time. I will use what has happened, however long ago, however recently. I will use what has happened to wake myself up to the love that is available for me, as me, from me, through me. The Spirit of the living God is what animates each one of us. If God weren't living you, you wouldn't be alive. So breathe into that aliveness and know that you have infinite choice to choose love over and over and over and over and over again. Choose love over keeping score. There's no scoreboard. Let it go. Choose love over assigning blame. What if everybody is doing exactly what they're supposed to do in order to help wake the world up? What if the most noble, respectful, loving thing I can do is to wake up? In this moment, I choose to wake up to the love that I am, that we are. I choose to know that love is why I'm here. I choose to give love knowing that I shall and have already received. And so it is. Amen.